Hello, everybody. Welcome to another HeartMind Happy Hour on this beautiful Friday afternoon in Lander, Wyoming is where I am, and to you, wherever you are in the world. I am your host, Holly Copeland. I'm a human potential coach, and I co-run the HeartMind Alchemy Project page on community on Facebook, and kind of community of biohackers and meditation geeks and people who are really, into, personal performance and personal betterment. And so I thought, what better person to have than somebody who's also into those things. A good friend of mine, Shane Borza. Shane is an ultimate performance coach and has a really wonderful background in eclectic. So he's actually an indie filmmaker for 20 years and has done a lot of work with people on the physical side of coaching with something called Strong First. And he's more recently been certified in psychological fitness coaching, and he's combining those talents into new ultimate performance coaching that he's unveiling this month. And so he's here to talk about that, and we'll geek out on some of the key components of that. And especially I want to talk to him about the psychological fitness aspects, which include presencing and awareness, and kind of get into how that interacts with this holistic program he runs that's called Ultimate Performance. So I'm super excited that he's here and has made some time to chat with us all. So welcome, Shane. Welcome to HeartMind Happy Hour.
Yeah, thanks so much. I was super psyched that we met and that we get a chance to chat again. And hello to everyone in the community.
Yeah, well, thank you. Welcome. And wherever you are on this beautiful day, just sending you lots of light and blessings and love, and hope that you can take something positive and meaningful away from this conversation. I just welcome you here, and I'm so grateful to have you here. So with that, Shane, I think a wonderful place to open would be to describe a little bit about your background and your perspective and how you came into this. I know I interviewed Shane a few months ago about his work, but for those who haven't seen it or don't know, I think that just love to hear a little bit about your background and what you bring to this work.
Yeah, thank you for that invitation. And I think eclectic is a good word. On one hand, it seems like a lot of the things I think that most people kind of do, they go left and then they go right and then they go backwards, and they go forwards. And sometimes it seems like they're not connected, but really they all represent the multifacetedness of each of us. And so while I was going through all the different parts of my background, it felt like each thing was the next logical step. But then when I look back, I kind of go, how did I end up over there? So what I've tried to do in this kind of flagship course is say, I've learned all these valuable lessons from all these different things I've done. How can I incorporate them all together so that, if you're in ABC, you can still learn XYZ, even though they're opposite sides of the alphabet. So I grew up being an athlete, predominantly like a mountain athlete. I was always an outdoor person. And that quickly went into specializing in being a climber. I worked at climbing gyms and taught at colleges and outdoor ed departments and ropes courses and all that, and got my state guide license and then national guide license. That was pretty much like my whole life for 10 or 20 years. And so in that regard, I was doing traditional coaching, like sports coaching and personal training and wilderness medicine and, learning canoeing and backpacking and all the outdoor things. And so there's a lot of both hard skills and soft skills there. You're leading groups, so you need to learn communication and decision-making and problem solving and prioritizing and triage and that kind of thing, as well as learning how to actually teach the skill set, which you need to learn first. And that got me really interested in then learning how to use that more as like leadership and education instead of just like guiding. So I got a master's degree in human relations with a focus in education, because the idea was to then say, well, how do I learn to take teaching out of guiding and just make it more teaching in general? And then that transitioned into having coaches myself in the term of like life coaches and mentors, and then going like, oh, this is kind of like teaching, which is kind of like guiding, you know? So I've kind of, I guess, been in this space in various ways most of my life. It just was, you know, what's the term? And as you mentioned, from coaching, because we share the HPI background, Human Potential Institute, they offer a specialty course in psychological fitness. And I said, oh, I like fitness, but it's mental fitness, emotional fitness, all that kind of like internal fitness. And the thing that I would say that most resonates with me in having some of these contrasts, and I encourage other people to think about this too, is quite often I'll be like, oh, I went to 5 Strong First courses to learn kettlebells and breathwork and programming and what have you. And it's not until I kind of look at the physical training through the lens of like the mental training that I go, oh, now I see this whole other layer to what I learned in kettlebells, for instance. Or, oh, now that I think about what I learned in life coaching school, I realize I learned that lesson at Strong First when they were teaching us kettlebells, but I didn't understand it outside of a sports connotation or like a physical connotation. And so I'm able to now go, these are all similar lessons. The verbiage might be different, or the kind of usage might be different, but if you step back, it's really applicable to multiple parts of our lives. And so that's where my idea came from, like meshing all this together and saying, you know, we are our body, but we're also our mind. So let's maybe work on both instead of one or the other.
Oops. Oh, beautiful, beautiful. So you really brought your experience from all these different walks of life, from the different, you know, places that you did coaching or worked on yourself in your own way, and kind of brought them together. And you sort of said the ABC and the XYZ, and the first thing that came to mind was, oh, so it's like alphabet soup coaching. But which could sound disorganized, or you could take it as actually what it means is that you know, what I hear from you is sort of no matter what somebody's interest or strength is, whether it's if they're coming to it with a little bit more of a physical fitness emphasis, or they're coming to it with more of a mental emphasis, that you're trying to kind of combine them all into this one. Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah, and to go back again to my kind of sports background, I had a coach once say, you know, if you're really good at, I was a track athlete and a skier, and so they're both predominantly like legs and conditioning and that kind of stuff. And I remember one of my coaches said, you know, if someone's really strong, but they're not really fast, they're not going to perform better if they make themselves stronger. Mm-hmm. They would be better served to work on their weaknesses and let their strengths kind of coast, because those come naturally to them, and just kind of maintain them. You know, maybe you're at a 9 out of 10 in one aspect of your life. And if you let it slide a little bit, maybe it goes down to an 8.5 or even an 8, but you're still pretty high in the scale. But it might be really beneficial to take the 1 or the 2 that's really a struggle for you, work on that and bring that up to like a 5 or a 6. Because now the difference between what you're really good at and what you're really bad at is only this much instead of this much. And you become much more balanced and even. And therefore, not only in athletics, you kind of don't have a hole in your game, but also in your life, it's the same thing. And so one of the things that I really took away with that is when I went into coaching, as you know, the coaching school, you're really learning how to better yourself first, and you kind of live the experience of being coached. And I said, oh, I've got a lot of work to do. And it reminded me like, oh, this is like when you're halfway through the season and your coach is like, well, you've gotten better at this and this and this, but don't forget about this other thing. And that was the other thing I thought was always really helpful to me. I do really well with having a coach. When I try to program myself, I don't have that perspective of looking at myself from the outside, but I also don't have anyone to hold me accountable. And getting into life coaching, I realized, oh, this is the same having a partner, having someone who can see from the outside perspective, having a partner to keep you accountable for your actions, you know, ensuring you're like ready to show up on the court or in the field or in the life. So again, those are all kind of parallel things. If you step back, it's kind of like a life in general. You know, most of us have more connections and things that unite us than separate us, but quite often we focus on the differences as opposed to like the similarities.
Sure. Yeah, and I so agree with you. I mean, I just think, you know, whether it's a coach or it's some other form of support, having support for our goals, mentors is just very crucial if you really want to, you know, make progress quickly. I think for so many of us, that's just a key component that can help you in so many ways. So, and there's a lot of people on the planet, so we need a lot of mentors and coaches out there. Shoot, there was a question I was going to ask you based on, I was just going to say, you know, based on your comment about looking to where your weaknesses are, it reminds me of a conversation I was having today with a beautiful woman I was having lunch with, and we were talking about looking at your triggers carefully, you know, the things, and in this context, we were talking about emotional triggers, as, you know, those are if something's triggering you, then that's a sign and a growth area, right? If we are being triggered, like, ooh, that person's really, you know, they're feeling a lot of judgment. Well, like what is it that's causing, you know, that arising in yourself? And, you know, that's a place to shine a light of awareness in order to uncover our own obscurations on awareness, to see what's clouding our awareness. So yeah. I think that idea translates from what you're talking about, which is, you know, any challenge or weakness or obscuration can be a place that we can shine a light to grow, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, I think a lot of these things are pretty universal. It's just a matter of figuring out how do you kind of translate it into a different group of people, or the way different people look at things. Because if some people are super body and you're talking about their mental processes, it's just not going to land for them. And if other people are super intellectual or cerebral and you're talking about all this embodiment, then they're just going to, you know, they might dismiss it. And so that's, again, where I think the combination is, because some people may say like, oh, I'm all about this internal work, and I know I should exercise and do all that other stuff, but I don't know, I'm not really interested. And so I can like kind of go, oh yeah, we're going to learn that stuff, and then sneak into other stuff. And then vice versa. If people like, I want to get healthy, you know, I don't feel well, it's all about the body for them. You know, the foundation really is all that internal stuff. Like, you need to be aware of, like you mentioned, those thoughts. If you're constantly just autopiloting to certain behaviors or patterns or habits, and you feel like this judgment come out, oh, of course it never works, or of course I'm no good at this, or whatever. Like you said, that's where that friction comes in. That's where it's like, oh, if I'm aware of this happening, then I know now, oh, this is a trigger for me, or this is a hot button. But quite often they don't have that first step, which is the awareness that that's happening. And so whether it's, again, kind of wanting to improve the physical fitness or the mental fitness or whatever, it all starts with that kind of presence and awareness, and then builds from there in whatever aspect that you want to focus on. Oh, you muted yourself.
Thank you. I have a daughter practicing cello in the background. I wasn't sure if it was interrupting or not. So you have there's 8 key components to the ultimate performance approach. Can you describe a little bit about what they are, and then we'll choose some to dive into?
Yeah, I'll give a quick overview. So there's 8 parts to the course, because it's an 8-week course. So each week we kind of do a deep dive to one section, and it's a group coaching course. So my hope is that people come in, I wrote a handbook or a course book. So each chapter corresponds with a week. So they'll kind of do the reading, there's questionnaire, there's a number of kind of recommended practices like meditation and centering exercises and things like that, that are things to kind of add into your daily practice or into your kind of routine, so that over the course of the week, you can kind of experiment with that, see if it's working for you, resonating, if it's landing, if it's not. And then when we have the group call, we'll get a chance to kind of go over everything, discuss it, tweak it, help people, answer their questions. But there's also that kind of community, so people can kind of pair up and have a buddy that they can kind of talk through week to week on the course and see like, well, how's it working for you? And how's it working for you? And that type of thing. So we start off week one with just, I call it team, which a lot of people will know. People say it stands for together, everyone accomplishes more. So I really want to get everybody on, have everybody understand like, what's the purpose of the class? How's it going to work? Who is everyone? What are our goals? And that enables me to know like, where's everyone at? Where do they want to go individually, but also as a group? And then we go into alignment, which is all based in the psychological fitness stuff. So it's the head, the heart, and the gut. So like the thoughts, the feelings, and the intuition, which I think intuition is a big thing that's left out of the discussion. Quite often people talk about the feelings they have and the thoughts they have. But I think a lot of us have a strong intuition that will come up, and we either dismiss it or we don't recognize it for that kind of deep inner knowing. And I think that's really important. And then we move into breath work, which is not only, I think, a great way to help reset the mind, but also in a sports context, it's a great way to like, energize yourself, to kind of dump stress, or to reset yourself. Like if you're, doing some running or you're lifting weights or whatever, if you can learn how to use breath work to get yourself prepared to then, go again. But that also applies in life too. Like, oh, I just got off a really bad phone call and now I'm supposed to get this presentation in the boardroom. How do I reset myself? Let me do some breath work. So I think it's applicable there. And then there's a nutrition week, week on kryptonite. So kind of life and biohacking and learning how to, different testing, whether it's gut microbiome or what have you. So that way, what is kind of tripping you up and holding you back. And then from there, we move into fitness week. And then we end with a week on mission, vision, values. So we really get clear on, what is your like deep purpose in life? Are you living those day to day? And if not, how? And if you don't know what they are, how do you figure those out? And then the final week is integration. So how can we take all these different aspects of not only your life, but all the things you learned in this course and put them together in a sustainable way that works for you, so that you can then take on the things that work, dismiss the things that don't. And then now you have this replicable pattern so that you can go forward in your life and say, there's 1,000 things in this class. 100 of them are fine, but really there's these 10 that for me are like the perfect combination. And it turns into this alchemy of, oh, I now know for me the best way to kind of balance out all the different aspects of my life and have my ultimate performance.
Wow, that's beautiful. And it sounds like a really wonderful arc of your course. I mean, sorry. Are you hearing that?
Yeah, you blacked out there for a minute, but I got you again.
No, I apologize on that. It sounds like you have this beautiful arc of the course of really, sort of doing the mental and, working with psychological fitness that I really want to dive into, because that's my kind of key interest area these days. And then sort of progress into physical, more on the physical side, personal kryptonites, and can often be physical, and then kind of into mission and goals. It's really beautiful. Sign me up.
Yeah.
Sounds like
thank you.
Awesome. It's a wonderful course you've designed.
Well, as you mentioned the arc, it reminds me, we learn in coaching that there's an arc not only in each session, but also like in the relationship with the client. So someone's there for a month or a quarter or a year, you're going to have a series of arcs. And so that was one of the things I said, okay, what's a good way to create that not only kind of week to week or lesson to lesson, but also in the overall program, so that it's not just like, over at the last week, what do I do with this? So, wanting to set people up for success, wanting to have people feel like, just like in a good film or book, like, oh, there's a definitive kind of beginning, middle, and end. And now that I look back on the book or kind of replay the movie in my head, I go, oh, of course the story was like that. And oh, that is such a satisfying end because they set it up correctly. So it was interesting though, because I just took 2 new Strong First courses this year, and I had this kind of like done in the beginning of the year, and I was like, oh, I gotta redo this because I have all this, new stuff I want to put into it, because when you learn new things, you get excited about them, but also, again, it helps you to reframe the things you've learned before.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, I'd love to dive into some pieces. And like I mentioned, the psychological fitness piece, I did a 1-hour workshop with Mark on that had those components. So I'm curious to hear more about that aspect. Why don't we dive in there first?
Yeah, so the thing that is, and Dr. Mark is amazing. He's the founder, for those that aren't familiar, Dr. Mark Atkinson, he's the founder of the Psychological Fitness Academy, which was born out of the Human Potential Institute. It's now, it has its own separate site and everything. And it really is a study of how you can learn to use your mind instead of your mind using you. And it does delve into a lot of connecting with your intuition, like I mentioned, and kind of recognizing and allowing your emotions to happen as opposed to like bottling them up. But it is focused mostly on the psychology and mental aspects of that, because quite often we use the mind to control everything else. And regardless of whether like your thoughts are the issue or not, by starting with the mind and then bringing in those other aspects of the feelings, the intuition, recognizing the triggers, addressing the habits, just like practice in sports. I come out of high school and college athletics, so it's like you go to practice every day. And what are you doing? You're learning new skills, and then you're practicing them on a daily basis so that they gradually become normal. And so psychological fitness is very similar. So doing things like meditation or heart breathing, or any kind of breathwork practice, or journaling. There's all these different things you can do that help you to address the initial thing of, oh, I never realized that this was an issue, or I thought my issue was A, but really it's B.
Yeah.
And again, that same sort of thing of introducing these, encouraging the practice so that you're kind of building the skill set of, oh, I can't meditate. And then it's like, and then slowly you're like, oh, I can meditate. And then I love to meditate.
I'm just from the 1 hour where if we in that exercise dropped into HeartMind, what I will call now sort of that heart-mind presence, knowing awareness from your heart as opposed to your head. How much does he go into the more of the Vedantic kind of non-dual, you are not your thoughts and emotions, but the awareness or pure consciousness behind them? Does he get into that with you, the students?
Yeah, so one of the things that I think that would be most aligned with that is the zooming out method, and where they talk about, quite often we identify the thought or feeling we have as ourselves, mm-hmm. and learning how to say, like, I'm angry. And you go, oh, well, I'm going to zoom out a little and say, I'm feeling angry. And then you zoom out a little more and go, I'm aware that I am feeling angry. And then zoom out a little more and go, okay, I'm aware of the awareness that I am having the feeling of being angry. And then you realize, like, this is a part of you. This is not the whole of you.
It's not who you are. Yeah.
And it's just like the perspective of anything else. The more you kind of step back, the more you can see. And the more, I think it puts, if you're right up against the screen, all you can see is the thing your eyes against, and then you step back and you have that perspective of, oh, this is a part of everything else I'm looking at. It's not the entirety of all that it is. So is that kind of like what you're asking about?
Yeah, it is what I'm asking about. And that last step, that move to I am the awareness that is the aware of thoughts and feelings, is the kind of core Vedantic, perspective on this. So that we are the pure consciousness that is aware of thoughts, feelings, perceptions. And that when we make that move first in an intellectual sense, and then in a felt sense of feeling, being the pure consciousness or pure awareness behind thoughts, feelings, and perceptions, that is a critical psychological move, because so many people are, as we would say, caught in the story. So they believe that if you feel in your life like you are, it's like it's as though you're an actor who's playing a character and you're fused to the character and you don't actually realize you're the actor behind the character. So it's actually becoming aware that you're the actor, that there is this pure consciousness who's caught in a play. That is what this is actually about. And then in making that move, we can detach from our thoughts and feelings and emotions and see the emptiness, see that actually there is no true I, and we are, that's an illusion. And when we see through that illusion of thoughts, feelings, and perceptions, then they don't control us anymore. They actually completely lose their power. Game over, game up. So the practice of those non-dual spiritual traditions is essentially that. It's seeing through the illusion. And so he is using those techniques borrowing from or harnessing those fundamental techniques from Mahamudra Dzogchen and Vedanta traditions and others to Zen, to kind of bring them in a very secular way, in a kind of modernized way.
Yeah, and I think especially for people who are in that kind of bulletproof, 4-hour work week, bio life, 10x performance optimization kind of world, things like psychological fitness seems more, I think, in line, because it seems like, oh, this is scientific and this is cutting edge, but really, like you said, this is all this ancient wisdom that has been around in one form or another, or one culture or another, for a long time. And then, and again, as they say, there's nothing new under the sun. It's just kind of how it's proposed or brought out. But I think that, again, it goes to a lot of terminology and language and things. So if I'm teaching more of a kind of strong first training, fitness, kettlebell, body weight, all my certifications on that side, I'm probably going to teach very similar content, but the language I use and the perspective that I put it in, which is all about physical performance and increasing your strength, conditioning, whatever, is going to be different than the psychological fitness world, where I'm talking about your mental practices and allowing and connecting with your emotions and allowing your intuition to come up and guide you and everything. But it's probably going to be very similar content, because really it's just about coming online as your whole best self, mindfully embracing the practice and building the skill, being aware of what's working and not, allowing the experience to happen, not forcing it, and maintaining the knowledge of what worked and what didn't, so that way I can move forward only with what's working, or tweak the things that aren't working to see if maybe they can work more the next time. And those concepts are really the same. But if you dropped into the other class, you would probably not think that it's the same lesson plan, because the language is so different. So I think that that's something that's really interesting, is because some people might listen to those old traditions and be totally in and like, yes, or totally out and be like, no, this is not for me at all. But really, it's a lot of the concepts are the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, And I agree. I mean, these are old concepts and they're recycled. And from my part, we need to just keep spreading that everywhere. So to me, it doesn't matter what form it's coming into, whether it's something that's, secular, like you're bringing in this kind of bulletproof ultimate performance, or, wherever it shows up, the more people kind of see through this illusion, the more people learn to disidentify with their thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and step back and recognize the true presence, the true self where they are, which is where peace actually resides, then the better off we'll all be, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's beautiful that you're incorporating that into this program in a very fundamental way, and that you're doing it right off the start, so that it's woven into the fabric of everything you're doing. I think that's beautiful. What a gorgeous approach.
Yeah, thank you. It's funny. So one of the things I like to say is that I help athletes be more mindful and like professionals be more bodyful, because they're both doing the same thing. They want, if you're an executive or you're an entrepreneur or you're running a startup, like you just want as much performance as possible. And you're really a mental athlete. Like you're creating content, you're writing stuff, and you're having meetings, and you're pitching, and you're just on. You're an 11 on a scale of 10, and it's all based on energy, sleep, those kind of internal practices, staying calm, adjusting, like noticing, reacting, all that stuff. But it's like you're a chess master. You're super dialed in and you're functioning at super high rate. And what you want to do is do even more with less. And the same thing, but it's predominantly all mental stuff. And quite often the exchange is, well, I'm going to stay up late because I have to finish this by tomorrow. So then you go into the presentation and it's done, but now you're exhausted. So now I'm going to, compensate with like sugar or caffeine or whatever. And you're trying to kind of have this race car, but everything you're putting into the engine is not very good. And then the same for athletes. They're like sleep, stress, relationships, fears. I don't care about any of that stuff. All I care about is what happens on the field. Is my physical performance better or worse? But same thing, like they're trying to run this race car and they're not putting anything good in it because they're not addressing the stress they have and the bad relationship they have and the fact that they can't sleep and the fact that they're injured and they're never recovering and all of those things. So again, stepping back and you say, oh, one's ABC, one's XYZ. They're seemingly opposite sides of that alphabet, but really their performance is suffering because one is only caring about their mental output and one's only caring about their physical output. But really, if they both address both, like, what if you had a little bit of time out in the sun and you slept and you had a good relationship and you actually saw your kids and like all that stuff, you would have so much less stress. You'd be so much happier. You'd go into the office and you'd feel much more centered and kind of aligned. Your output, your performance is probably going to improve. But again, if people aren't aware of some of these aspects of life, they might not even know that they need to be addressed.
Yeah, surely the holistic aspect of, whole being, this is really important, and strategies that can help people address their whole being like you've done. I think, yeah, I absolutely think that's everything that you said is really true. Tell me a little bit about the breathwork component, because we have a number of people in the HeartMind community that are interested in breathwork. What's your background there, and what's the program like there?
So as I mentioned, I was a high school, college athlete and been a kind of outdoor person my whole life. So breath to me was always a manner, something that improved from conditioning. Like it was all based on pulse rate and heart rate and what zone you were in and how hard could you go for so long, and being born in the 70s and growing up in the 80s, a lot of that stuff now we're finding out like, oh, you're not supposed to redline your heart rate as much as possible all the time. Whoops. So a lot of it came out of that sports coach, personal trainer background. And then when I got into life coach training, I learned more about kind of using breath as a presencing exercise or a way to kind of reset yourself. And people know a lot of different versions of counting your breath in or out, or doing holds, full or empty. Box breathing is very common, things like that. And then I went deeper into that with psychological fitness, because part of that is recognizing, oh, if you have an emotional trigger, quite often you'll hold your breath. And how can you use your breath to release those things? And then I took a Strong First course this year, which is called Second Wind. And it's an entire weekend long class. And it comes out of a lot of the old research done in Olympic lifting programs, whether it's the Soviet Union or America, strictly for performance. How can we have people use breath, either holding breath so you can build tension and force, or releasing breath, because where breath moves, it builds physical movement. So like moving with moving and stillness with stillness. And we learned a lot of things that quite often, through biohacking, life hacking, you kind of learn, oh, this is super disruptive. It's something I've never heard of. And it's complete game changer in whatever the thing is, like intermittent fasting, for instance. So like bulletproof coffee or whatever it is, you're like, oh, regular coffee compared to bulletproof coffee, this is a game changer. So some of the things I learned in Second Wind, they were so kind of extraordinary, and I've been putting into a daily practice, that I was like, oh, people need to know this. And whether they want to use it for, sports, fitness, outdoor athlete type of connotation, or they want to use it for like resetting emotional stuff like psychological fitness. I think, again, breath work, like anything else, you can use it for whatever you want to use it for, but a lot of the tools and the techniques, unless you're kind of introduced them, you don't even know that they're available to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you give us a little of an explanation, or even can we even do like right now, just an exercise? I love doing experiential stuff on my show. Like what is this breathing approach? How is it different from, Soma, or I don't know, a number of other breathing approaches that people might use?
Well, so I'll give you a little introduction, then we can run through a little exercise. So one of the main things that people talk about in sports is nose breathing versus mouth breathing. And so quite often, especially in like a combat sport, martial arts, boxing, UFC, something like that, you'll usually hear the commentators talk about like, oh, he's getting tired, he's breathing through his mouth, and you see the fighters who are super conditioned, they're the whole time. And the fighters who aren't, they're like, they're just trying to kind of, suck wind. They can't get enough air in. And so one of the things that they teach is there's a difference between the volume, which is how much air you can either take in or breathe out or hold, like total lung volume, and pressure. And actually a lot of the tests that they do for athletes now is not how long can you hold your breath or how much breath can you take in. It's how much breath can you exhale in 1 second? Because what the pressurization measures is the strength of your core to be able to squeeze out air. And the reason that's really important is because the faster you can exhale more air, the more room you have to inhale fresh air. And it's the exchange of gases that enables your body to recover faster. So if you're breathing really big in and out really slowly, your volume is big, but your pressure may not necessarily be big. And so one of the ways they teach that is to breathe through an ever increasing length of straws. And at first you have one straw, and it's really hard to breathe through because it's such a small opening, and you have to use so much breath control to push the air out and then pull it back in. And now it's been a few months and I can breathe through 5 or 6 straws put together. And quite often at lunch, I'll eat, I'll put a show on, and then however long is left from the end of lunch to the end of the show, I'll breathe through 2 or 3 feet worth of straws. And again, the first few minutes, 2 or 3 months ago, I could barely do it. And now I'm like, oh, I've been breathing through 3 feet of straw for 30 minutes and I didn't notice. And just like learning how to run, you're going to build up your endurance to run further or faster, and it becomes easier to breathe at that pace. But when you first start, you're like, I can't, it's terrible, everything hurts, you know? So one of the things that they first ask you to become aware of is it natural to breathe in and out of your nose? Or is it in through the nose, out through the mouth? You know, what's your pattern? Because there's basically three: nose, 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 mouth, or mouth, mouth. And again, the pressurization part comes from just using the nose, because obviously the holes in your nose are so much smaller. So you have to use so much more pressure. But one of the exercises I would ask you is that we call it stair stepping. So it's breathing in and out through your nose, but we do it in parts. So I'll just demonstrate real quick, and then I'll invite you all to try it. So we're going to breathe in several times. So we'll do like a 4 count. And each time, breathe in as much as you can, and then breathe in more, and then breathe in more, and then breathe in more. And then the same when you exhale. So we're going to exhale on a 4 count, and you exhale, you know, everything you possibly can. And you realize like, oh, there's actually more. Until you get to the point where you almost have this little like dry cough at the end, and that's when you're completely empty of breath. But quite often we never inhale all the way and we never exhale all the way. So I'll just show you what it looks like. So it'll be like, so you could hear that last little, the third time I had a little bit of a wheeze, and I still had a little bit of, you know, breath in there at the end. And the same thing after that third inhalation, I still had this tiny little sip of air that I could fit in.
Okay, great. And the exhale, you were doing it through your mouth? Is it always through your mouth, or can you do it either?
I usually show people it with the mouth first, just because it's easier for people to move more volume out faster. But that's another thing you can build towards, is doing it all through the nose.
Through the nose, okay.
You're welcome to do it any way that you like. And so I'll just cue everyone. So just take a few breaths like normal. And then we're going to inhale on a 4 count. And the goal is to inhale as much as you possibly can each time. You ready?
You mean, so okay, wait, let me clarify. So the first time we go, we're going to like just breathe in as much as you possibly can.
As big as you can.
Okay.
4 times in a row.
Okay. All right. Got it.
Okay. Everybody ready? Here we go. First breath in. Second. Third. Fourth. And out all the way. Out all the way again. Out all the way again. And again. Okay, now go back to regular breathing. So quite often when we are learning breath work, people will talk about, are you chest breathing? Are you belly breathing? You know, where's your breath going? And one of the things I learned in my breath course is that they call it, you know, breathe into your core, or breathe into your trunk. And really there's 3 parts that you can breathe into. You can fill your belly, you can fill your chest, and you can fill your throat. So really from about just below your navel to just below your chin is all a breath column. And so if you really want to engage in deep breathing, it's filling all of those chambers and emptying all of those chambers. And so one of the things I've only just now started to feel is like, oh, I can actually feel when I'm topping off the breath in my throat, as opposed to just filling my belly and my chest.
Yeah.
And so again, that's this whole other section of my body that I was never aware of before, that I can now use to either reset myself emotionally or use to reset myself physically.
Very cool. Oh, I appreciate you showing. I really appreciate you showing the stair stepping exercise, and it's interesting to do that practice. I do something similar, like take in double breaths in the breathwork meditative practices I do, but haven't done that kind of third and fourth. So it's interesting. And so what's again, just to recap, so this practice is really building the pressure muscle. That's what I heard you say, that there's this critical aspect of pressure. And can you tie that again into kind of, why is that important?
So one of the reasons that's important is the faster you can exchange the gases, because of course we're breathing in oxygen, breathing out CO2, is the faster you can breathe in again. And really, what do we want? We want to take in fresh air. But if you're trying to, if your glass is half full and you're trying to put in another glass of water, you can't. This needs to be empty, and then you can put a full glass of water in. So especially in sports, or if we're having a panic attack or we're under like deep internal stress, quite often people, or if you've ever heard or seen people, they have some kind of panic attack to like something stuck in their throat, and they'll stand up and start yelling, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe." Well, if they're talking, they can breathe. But they just feel like they can't because there's something stuck somewhere that's not normal. So this panic attack comes over. So again, whether it's running as hard as you possibly can, the faster you can expel all of the air, so you can take in a big breath and get fresh oxygen in, the faster your body is going to say, "Oh, I have all this air to work with." But again, it's also teaching so when I did martial arts for years, one of the things my jiu-jitsu sensei used to say all the time is, if someone's choking you, you aren't able to breathe like whenever you want. But that doesn't mean you can't breathe. It just means you might have to move around a little bit, and you go, "Oh, over here, I can take this little sip of air and I'm fine. And I'll just stay really relaxed and I'll problem solve this puzzle of like, where's the opening? Where's the opening?" But if instead I panic and I lock my whole body down as hard as I possibly can, I'm going to burn up the little oxygen I have, and I'm not going to find the little pocket where I can take a small sip of air. And again, breathing this much or this much, you're still breathing. You're just not breathing as much as you normally are. The other thing that's great about stair stepping, and it might be much more familiar to people in a different connotation, is especially for runners, quite often you'll do like a 2, 3, 4, 5 step breath in, out. So you have this rhythm. So it's like, that's stair step breathing. That's just in a sports connotation. And quite often, or cyclists, or anyone, swimmers, they'll do their opposite breathing. So they do their 3 strokes, they breathe in, they do their 3 strokes, they breathe out, and it becomes this rhythm. And the longer they can hold the rhythm, the longer they can kind of stay at whatever pace. Whereas if the opposite was true and they were breathing kind of haphazardly with no rhythm whatsoever, it's really hard for their body to say, I have no rhythm to my breathing, so it's really hard for me to have a rhythm in my physical output.
Got it. Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's great. You are reminding me, like a lot of us, and myself included, do exercise. Like I trail run every day, and I haven't worked with anybody to develop a breathwork pattern to go with my, jogging, for example. So you're causing me to stop and think about that. Like, oh, is that something I've been ignoring that I need to work on? There's a there. I'm guessing your answer would be yes, it's worth looking at.
Well, yeah, and as I said, I have been putting a lot of these things into practice. It's funny, our manual is like 225 pages or something, so it's like a textbook, and it's like, okay, I'm going to read like 10 pages a day because it's like doing calculus. But the takeaways are kind of life-changing. Like I predominantly am a bodyweight or kettlebell athlete as far as like training goes. And learning how to do the resets quite often is very counterintuitive. So the other main takeaway is a thing called triphasic breathing, which came out of Germany in the late 1800s, which came out of the German opera specifically. And they taught all of their singers how to breathe this way. It's part of learning to be a singer. And that was then taken over into Russia in the early 1900s. And there's actually, so in the National Russian Opera, ballet, German opera, Russian ballet, part of the ballet academy is you have classes in breathing. And they have like a 4-year academy, and there's 4 years of breathing. And they basically teach everyone triphasic breathing because it enables ballet dancers, especially the men, they're holding someone overhead and they just are super poised. Or the ladies, they're up on a toe and they're just holding their other leg behind them, and it looks effortless. And it's a 3-part breathing system, which is you allow in breath, an intake of breath. You're not doing it consciously, you're just allowing it to happen, because your default as a, like a mammal is to just like, whenever you need breath, you'll just breathe in automatically. And then you have a forced exhalation and then a pause. And the purpose—
breathe in and then a forced exhalation, or say—
So you allow the breath in, so you're not consciously like, take a deep breath. It's just allow the breath to happen naturally. What you're focusing on is the forced and full exhalation followed by a pause. And then you allow the breath to just happen again naturally without thinking of it. Forced exhalation, pause. Allow the breath to happen without thinking.
Can we all try that together? I like experiences.
Yeah.
Okay.
So without thinking, just breathe normally. And then at some point when you exhale, do a really forceful followed by a pause, empty breath. And then just breathe in without thinking of it. Like, allow the breath, they call it a breath return. You're allowing it to come back.
But every exhalation is a forced exhalation. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. So again, it's that pressurized breathing to completely empty the vessel, so you have more space for fresh oxygen to come in. So, and especially when you're just learning this to practice, making a big, really forcing all that breath out. And now I'm doing all of this talking with an empty breath. I haven't breathed back in yet. So this is my pause. And then I just breathe in. So the breathe in happens almost automatically without thinking. And then forced exhalation. All of this talking I'm doing is with an empty lung. This is my pause. And then I just breathe in.
You know what's interesting about that? I was just practicing this morning on the Flame and Sound. This is a HRV. It has an HRV tracker. And I was reading about that. I think this is where I was reading this. And they were talking about that you go into resonant breathing when you are holding your breath. So I wonder if it's a backhand way to get yourself into resonant breathing, which is, kind of an ideal HRV rhythm.
Well, one of the foundations of triphasic breathing is it's based on natural breathing patterns of people who are in deep sleep. So quite often they'll just naturally inhale. They'll have this big like pause, breathe in, pause. And it's interesting because I've been doing experiments and I've gotten myself down to 2 or 3 breaths a minute. Not because I'm actively doing a breath hold or because I'm timing my inhales and my exhales, but because over time, my empty hold has gone from I can comfortably hold empty for a few seconds to I can comfortably hold empty for 10 or 15 seconds. I inhale and then I have a slow, forceful exhale. And so the rhythm is now, I fill my lungs almost completely very quickly in a second or two, a few seconds of exhale, and then 10 or 15 seconds of empty, and that's 20 seconds. So I really only need to take a couple breaths a minute, and especially again for whether it's resetting your internal stuff or prepping for physical stuff. If someone's, waiting to do their next round in CrossFit or something, and they're doing that kind of like, they're not getting as much new air in and expelling the old air as someone who would just say, okay, I'm going to breathe all of this stuff out, get out all the waste product, fill myself with new, fresh air, expel it again, hold. My system's going to calm down really fast. And then instead of like 50 or 100 breaths as fast as they possibly can, which basically means you're like sprint breathing, you have some deep inhale, exhales, some really fast exchange, a rapid reset, and now physically, but also mentally and emotionally, you have calmed down. It's really hard to feel calm when you're breathing as hard as you possibly can. But if you slow the rhythm of your breath and you feel safe in your breathing, then all that internal stuff quiets. And then you're like, rather than go, oh God, I don't want to go back into the box and do another round of burpees. I'm going to die. Instead, you're like, yeah, I could do this all day. Like, I feel fine.
Right. You're activating your parasympathetic nervous system while you're in this exercise state. And so is the intent, this is great. I'm loving this, learning about this. Is this the intent that you would actually do this triphasic breathing throughout your day? I mean, is that what the ballet dancers learn to do, or?
So it's more for when they want to perfect the skill of breathing in that manner, so that when they're performing, they're able to perform at a super high level and not show any sign, any cracks, so to speak. It's elegant, it's beautiful, it's graceful, there's no effort whatsoever. It's kind of like when you watch an Olympic gymnast. Yeah. You almost get fooled into thinking like, well, I could do that. Because it seems like they're so graceful and fluid and just beautiful and it's effortless. And you're like, no, this is like the most difficult thing on the planet. There's 3 people in the world that can do that routine.
Yeah.
It took them 20 years to learn how to. There's no way I could do that. But they look so, or they talk about Olympic track athletes. They're so calm in their face that you can see like their cheeks, their faces are like rising and falling with their footsteps because they're so relaxed. Well, their body is completely tense. They're running as hard as they possibly can, but they're not flexing anything that doesn't help them go faster.
True.
So again, the combination of like, how can we relax the mind and be in harmony with what we're feeling, so none of that is, causing these internal clenches.
Right. But wouldn't we want that all the time, every day? I mean, who wouldn't want that all the time?
Yes. So again, it's really hard to be like on all the time because we're going to be focused on something else. I'm having a conversation, I'm giving a presentation, I'm on the phone, I'm trying to type something. So in those moments, we might be able to do some of that in the background, but really it's those in between. It's like, oh, I just did the presentation. I'm going to walk back to my office. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to focus on a breath reset for the 2 minutes it takes me to walk back to the office. So I'm going to mindfully practice this skill. So when I go back to the office and I realize like, oh, I just got 40 emails while I was giving the presentation, I can approach those emails from a place of centered calm.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, I mean, I feel like, that would be how ideally you'd be operating from that space in all walks of life, whether you're answering an email, whether you're doing a presentation, whatever you're doing, that you bring that presence of mind and that consciousness and awareness, and that you harness these techniques like the breath work you're talking about in the body to actually help facilitate that. So that you aren't allowing your body to kind of hijack you, but you're actually using it as a tool to help, calm body, calm mind kind of a thing. Yeah. Well, I see that I can't believe it, but it's been an hour and I could talk to you easily for another hour about all the other pieces, but I am mindful of time. And so hopefully this gives folks at least a taste of some of what this beautiful course that you put together is. And if folks want to learn more about it and the other components, where can they go? And I also know you have a really nice offer for the HeartMind Alchemy community. So do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. So my website is in my name. All my social medias are in my name, shaneborza.com. And there's a button you can schedule a call with me if you want to chat about some stuff, or you can email me. And there is a page for the Ultimate Performance course. And I am in beta. And this, I have a business coach, and it was really helpful for me to have her say, one of the things that we can offer people right now is solutions, but also things now. And full disclosure, like I'm still building my site. The coupon code box isn't there yet, but I don't want to wait till next year. And I'm sure there are people out there that don't want to wait either. So because some of this stuff is new and still evolving, I've got a coupon code for your community called HeartMind. And they'll get 65% off the course, so that way they'll still be able to get all the content. They'll still be able to get all the lessons, but they'll be able to kind of work with me as everything gets dialed in over the next few months.
Oh, that's really awesome. And that's a very generous discount for the HeartMind community. So thank you so much for offering that. And
and thank you for having me on. It's so lovely to see you again.
Yeah, very lovely to see you too. And I really wish you all the best and great success with your course. And yeah, folks, I hope you, if this has resonated with you, reach out to Shane. He's really awesome and has a ton to offer. And especially in this holistic space, I just really, yeah, I wish you the best. I think this is a fantastic contribution. Thank you so much, Shane.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate all you do. And as always, best to all of your people.
Yeah, thank you so much. And if you're interested in, I've got some new coaching collaborations, one with Stephen Altair coming out. So my website, heartmindalchemy.com, under Awake and Unbound, you can look at that, and I'll have some more coming out. Kiefer O'Sullivan and I are launching a Rewire Your Brain coaching course also. So lots to offer people who are looking for help and assistance, which is, I think, very exciting. So wish you all, thank you so much for being here, for watching, and hope everybody has a beautiful day wherever you are. All right. Bye-bye.